This article contains major Logan spoilers. They flee into the woods like lambs breaking out of a slaughterhouse. To be sure, these children, these failed mutant experiments, are not helpless. It's a fact that Boyd Holbrook's grotesque Donald Pierce discovers the hard way. But they are still children, innocent in almost all matters save for that they have been classified as others by authorities at large. Seen as nothing more than subhuman, the youngsters are thus being rounded up by big men with even bigger guns. There is no way that director James Mangold and his fellow co-writers could anticipate Logan was going to open in the shadow of President Donald Trump's sanctioned raids, targeted enforcement actions, but the juxtaposition should be obvious for any American moviegoer. And it's also chilling. A dozen kids, all with various skin tones and born from Mexican mothers, are being fired upon and handcuffed because of where they were born. Only now it is somewhere more distinct than south of the border. It's a Mexico City hospital. So like the law-abiding undocumented immigrants who got swept up in February's raids on illegal immigrants who have committed crimes, including now misdemeanors in a new Trumpian wrinkle, their innocence or even their youth matters less than their classification by a bunch of white men high on the intoxication of righteous authority. In other words, Logan, whether inadvertently or not, is the perfect X-Men movie for the age of Donald Trump, a time period increasingly looking grimmer than anything Oscar Isaac threatened in last summer's ostensible apocalypse film. While few, including perhaps the new 45th President of the United States, could have anticipated the outcome of the U.S. election in November, Logan is still knowingly embracing a tradition that began in X-Men comics and has persisted throughout its cinematic descendants. The new movie is taking stories of modern-day persecution and hysterical scapegoating, and adding a technicolor superhero affectation to the fearmongering. In early comics, that meant indirect allusions to the civil rights movement, as well as the still potent fears of another Holocaust as represented by Magneto's tortured background. And on film, it meant highlighting the parallels between a mutant's adolescence with those of the LGBTQ community in the early 2000s. Famously, 2003's X2 featured a scene in which Bobby Drake, Shawn Ashmore, aka Iceman, had to come out of the closet to his parents. Born as a mutant, Bobby hid his ability of freezing liquid from his family his whole life, even convincing them that Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters was just a fancy prep academy. However, as soon as he reveals he has superpowers, his parents blame themselves, incredulously ask if he's tried not being a mutant, and see their other son call the cops on his brother. While all of this would run the risk of being maudlin in 2017, X2 came out in 2003, the year before President George W. Bush and Karl Rove ran a winning campaign that was, in part, based on prejudices against members of the LGBTQ community, with phony promises of drafting a constitutional amendment that would put in our founding document a rule prohibiting same-sex marriage. Now in 2017, Mangold and company have updated that paranoia around the latest scapegoats for a Republican president, immigrants and refugees. Whether Trump had become president or not and attempted to ban immigrants from 7 predominantly Muslim countries, his shadow clearly fell across the screenwriting process of Logan. He entered the presidential race by suggesting that many Mexican immigrants were rapists in 2015, and ended that same year by encouraging a complete, and unconstitutional, Muslim ban. When I spoke with Mangold in February about this very issue, he was aware that the stirring of dark forces in American culture had splashed over into Logan. "We're just trying to reflect our world," Mangold told me. "This movie, we finished writing the last full script was just about a year ago. And the politics of both what was happening in Europe and in USA were all around us while making the movie. It's visible during the opening scenes when a retired Wolverine is chauffeuring in his limo some frat boys headed either to a party or sorority social. Their intended destination is not important, even to them, Since they have Logan drive his car past the Mexican border so they can chant at legal immigrants and Mexican travelers, USA. 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 Failing to distinguish between legal and illegal entry, they likely can't tell much of a difference between desperate families and rapists either. Logan, though, is no more of a bleeding heart. The film begins with him decimating a gang of Spanish speakers whom President Trump could accurately describe as bad hombres, hellbent on stealing Logan's limo. And he is just as cold to Mexican nurse Gabriela, Elizabeth Rodriguez,